Story 1. In the expanse of a realm forgotten by time, where celestial guidance weaves fates unknown, the lands between awaited the advent of a herald. This herald was not born of royal blood, nor destined for glory by lineage, but marked by the very cosmos that shaped the Erdtree the first tarnished. Elden was his name, once whispered among the ranks of formidable warriors but exiled into obscurity due to an indelible curse, a stain that no water could cleanse, a shadow not even the sun could chase away. When the call came, it was neither a summon of honor nor a plea for valor, it was the Erdtree itself, beckoning him to return to the lands between, a realm that had cast him out with nothing but disdain. Elden's life before the call was fraught with the mundane toils of a mercenary in lands far and wide. He had become accustomed to the feel of the earth underfoot, a relentless wanderer seeking neither redemption nor conquest. Yet, in the solemnity of his exile, the guidance of grace found him, a spectral whisper that felt like a breeze against the grit of his weathered skin. As he stepped through the veil, the boundary that marked the threshold between his forsaken existence and the mythical lands between, Elden felt a pulsation, a heartbeat of the land that echoed through his very soul. The air shimmered with the golden hue of the Erdtree, its massive, life-giving presence a beacon in the distance, pulsating with the light of 1,000 suns captured in its sacred leaves. The land was fraught with beauty and danger, a tapestry of wonder woven with threads of trepidation. As he ventured deeper, guided by an unseen force, the flora and fauna spoke of an age where gods walked freely and magic was as common as the clay beneath one's feet. However, it was not the beauty of the lands between that tested Elden's resolve, but the remnants of its shattered order. His first encounter with a demigod was not one of reverence but survival. Morgoth the Omen King, in his regal decay and tainted majesty, stood before Elden. Once a figure of worship, now a twisted echo of divinity, Morgoth bore the scars of the shattering a cataclysm that had torn the realm asunder, leaving the demigods to vie for the remnants of power that the Erdtree still bestowed. Morgoth's appearance was ghastly, a grotesque melding of beast and royalty, his crown askew, embedded with stones that glimmered with a light fast fading, tarnished. He bellowed, his voice a cacophony of despair and rage. "Why does the Erdtree call upon the likes of you? What hope do you bring to a land forsaken?" Elden, unflinching, met the demigod's gaze. His voice, though hoarse from disuse, carried the weight of his newfound purpose. "I come not to seek the Elden Ring, nor to claim a throne," he declared, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade, worn yet unyielding. "I am here to understand why the Erdtree has summoned me back to see what remains of grace in these lands." The clash was inevitable. Steel sang against the backdrop of a dying light, and magic flared, illuminating the ruins of what once might have been a sacred site. Morgoth fought with the ferocity of a deity scorned, a king robbed of his realm, while Elden parried and struck with the precision of a warrior reborn under the guidance of grace. The battle raged, neither yielding nor overcoming, until the skies themselves seemed to weep for the tragedy of it all. It ended not with a victor's cry, but with mutual exhaustion, a recognition of the futility of their strife. Morgoth, his strength waning, staggered back, the light of recognition dawning in his eyes. You carry the weight of the curse, yet you fight not for dominion, but for understanding, Morgoth muttered, his voice softening. Perhaps you are the herald of change, the first tarnished to return, not for glory but for atonement. As Morgoth retreated into the shadows of his fallen kingdom, Eochaid stood alone amidst the ruins, the guidance of grace clearer now. He was to be neither king nor conqueror, but a seeker of truths in a land of lies, the first of many tarnished who would follow the winding paths of fate under the watchful boughs of the Erd Tree. His journey had only just begun. Story 2. In the eons before the Erd Tree became the pulsating heart of the lands between, the realm was a tumultuous canvas of celestial intentions and terrestrial designs. It was during these embryonic epochs of creation that the ancient beings of immense power and inscrutable origins conceived the idea of a monument that would not only dominate the landscape, but also embody the very essence of order and life itself. This monument would come to be known as the Erd Tree, a colossal life source destined to intertwine the fate of all beings with the cosmic ballet. The ancients were not merely architects of stone and soil, they were weavers of the arcane, manipulators of the very threads that held the universe together. Among them, 3 figures stood preeminent: Eltharion, the weaver of light Nocturnus, the shadow that shapes and guile, the heartbeat of earth. These 3, through a pact sealed in the ethereal flows of aether and essence, embarked upon the creation of the Erd Tree. Eltharion, with his mastery over the celestial lights and the radiant energies of the stars, gathered the luminescence required to fuel the Erd Tree's boundless vitality. His travels across the constellations were quests for the purest forms of light, each star a different hue, each comet a different temper. These celestial fragments were to be the seeds from which the Erd Tree's life-giving powers would sprout. Nocturnus, in contrast, delved into the shadows cast by all creation, weaving the darkness into a protective cloak that would shield the Erd Tree from the corruptions that lurked in the void. He understood that light and life could only thrive if balanced by darkness, hence he harnessed the umbra of abandoned worlds and dying moons, crafting a barrier that was both ward and cradle to the nascent Erd Tree. Lastly, Gael invoked the essence of the primeval earth, binding the energies of light and shadow into a physical form. Her powers rooted the Erd Tree deep into the fabric of the lands between, intertwining its fate with the soil, the winds, and the waters. Gael's chants and earth songs moulded the Erd Tree's vast trunk and sprawling branches, infusing them with resilience and the capacity to regenerate. Together, the trio performed the Ritus Arbore, a celestial symphony of creation that lasted 7 times 7 years. The site chosen for the Erd Tree was a valley surrounded by 7 mountains, each echoing the energies needed to stabilize the nascent tree. At the ritual's climax, as Eltherion wove the last of the starlight, Nocturnus bound the final shadow, and Gael anchored the last root, a burst of divine energy enveloped the lands between. The birth of the Erd Tree was not a silent affair, it was a cosmic declaration. Its roots dug through dimensions, tapping into wellsprings of ancient power hidden beneath the mortal surfaces. Its trunk rose like a pillar of light, visible even to distant worlds as a beacon of life's tenacity. Its branches spread wide, each leaf a miniature cosmos of vibrant energies. But the Erd Tree was more than a source of life, it was a keeper of balances. The ancients had embedded within its core a matrix of runes, each a compact of cosmic laws. These runes regulated the flow of energies, ensuring that the tree's power nurtured the land without overwhelming it. They also acted as seals containing the more volatile forces that had been harnessed during the tree's creation. As the eons passed, the Erd Tree's influence permeated every aspect of the lands between. Civilizations rose around its base, worshipping it as a divine entity. Kings and queens sought its blessings, warriors its strength, and scholars the secrets hidden in its vast silhouette. However, the Erd Tree was not impervious to the ambitions of those it towered over. As ages turned, the balance began to falter under the weight of mortal desires and divine intrigues. The seals within the Erd Tree weakened, and the dark energies Nocturnus had bound into its foundation began to stir. The ancients, having retreated into the folds of their own immortality, watched as their creation faced the inevitable cycle of decay and renewal that governs all things. Amidst this celestial drama, the Erd Tree continued to stand resolute, a testament to the powers it had been imbued with and the vision of its creators. It remained a beacon of hope and a symbol of life's enduring presence, even as the shadows lengthened across the lands between, heralding the challenges yet to come. The story of the Erd Tree's crafting, whispered through the leaves and echoed in the winds, remains a legend of creation's potential and its peril a saga of light, shadow, and the eternal heartbeat of the earth. Story 3. Miquella, ensconced within the silken embrace of his cocoon, hovered in a realm between sleep and wakefulness, a timeless, meditative state where dreams melded with visions and aspirations were as vivid as memories. This peculiar stasis was not a prison but a sanctuary, a place for introspection and profound cosmic communication. Here within the delicate threads woven by his own divine power, Miquella, the eternal child among demigods, contemplated the salvation of his sister Melania and the realization of his dream, the creation of an uncorrupted Halig tree. The visions that visited Miquella were more than mere figments of imagination, they were projections of possible futures, blueprints of a world he yearned to forge. The Halig tree, in its pristine essence, was at the heart of these visions, a colossal, life-sustaining tree that would stand as a bastion against the spreading blight that afflicted the lands between, including his sister. Unlike the Erd Tree, bound to the cycles of golden order and decay, his Halig tree would be a monument to purity, untouched by the ambitions and corruptions of the demigods, and their followers. In his dream, the Haligtree towered over vast, lush gardens that spread out in all directions. Its leaves shimmered with an ethereal glow, each one a small, potent bastion against corruption. Beneath its boughs the sick came not just in hope but in certainty of healing. The air around the Haligtree was crisp and invigorating, filled with a magical effervescence that cleansed the body and soul. Here Melania would find solace and a cure, her affliction washed away by the tree's sanctifying aura. Miquella's vision for the Haligtree extended beyond a mere sanctuary for healing. He envisioned it as a center of a new order, a society governed by compassion and harmony. This utopia would be a place where the tarnished could find redemption and the lost could find a home. It would be a counterpoint to the relentless ambition and strife that defined the politics surrounding the Erdtree. In Miquella's dream, the Haligtree was not just a tree, but a foundation for a new civilization. Within the cocoon, Miquella communed with the energies of the cosmos, seeking insights into the ancient magics and lost alchemies that could empower his Haligtree. He delved into the arcane mysteries of the scarlet rot that plagued his sister, understanding its nature not merely as a disease but as a manifestation of imbalance and decay that could be countered by the pure vitality his Haligtree would radiate. Miquella also foresaw challenges. The vision was occasionally clouded by the shadows of those who would oppose his new order. The ambitions of other demigods, the inertia of the old faiths, and the pervasive corruption that sought to undermine any purity. It was a path fraught with conflict and strife. Yet in his heart he felt a steady resolve, an unshakable belief in his divine purpose that fortified him against the doubts that occasionally whispered through his dreams. Moreover, Miquella's dream was not just for the physical and spiritual restoration of the lands between, but also a personal crusade. He envisioned freeing himself and Melania from the shackles of their cursed immortality. In his most profound dreams, he saw himself grown beyond the form of an eternal child, standing tall and proud beside his sister, both healed and whole, guardians of the Haligtree and their new realm. But as the cocoon shielded and nurtured him, it also isolated him. Miquella knew that to bring his vision to fruition, he would one day need to emerge from his silken sanctuary. He would need to confront the world outside, to weave his dream into the fabric of reality. He prepared himself for that day, strengthening his will and his power, ready to face the inevitable adversaries with grace and might. Days, years, or centuries might pass outside his timeless refuge, but Miquella remained patient, his resolve unyielding. Each moment spent in the cocoon was a step towards his grand vision, each dream a brick in the foundation of his future utopia. Thus, within the confines of his cocoon, Miquella, the child demigod, dreamt of a world reborn under the boughs of his Haligtree, a world where the sick were healed, the lost were found, and the corrupted purified. And in this dream he and Melania stood at the center, not as victims of a cruel fate, but as architects of a new destiny, a dream he knew that would one day transform into reality. Story 4. General Radan, once hailed as one of the mightiest demigods in the lands between, was renowned not only for his unparalleled strength in battle, but also for his unwavering command over his legions. His domain, the desolate and harsh landscapes of Caelid, flourished under his rule, transforming into a bastion of military might. But this glory was destined to wane, marked by the star's mysterious curse that heralded his tragic descent into madness. The tale of Radan's fall began with a celestial event, an ominous convergence that was observed by the kingdom's astromancers with deep unease. It was foretold that the stars themselves would align in such a way to bestow great power or a terrible curse upon those they touched. For Radan it was tragically the latter. As the astral alignment reached its zenith, a palpable shift occurred in Radan. What began as a subtle change in demeanor gradually spiraled into a profound transformation of both mind and spirit. Initially, the effects of the star's curse seemed to augment Radan's already formidable abilities. His prowess in battle grew exponentially, and his fame as a warrior spread even further across the lands. However, the enhancement of his physical capabilities came at a dire cost to his psyche. Radan began to exhibit signs of paranoia and uncharacteristic brutality. Strategies once defined by cunning and bravery turned into ruthless tactics devoid of honor. His once clear and strategic mind became mired in a fog of confusion and rage. As the curse tightened its grip, Radan's appearance also began to change. His once human features distorted grotesquely as the cosmic energy coursed unchecked through his body. His eyes, once sharp with intelligence, now glowed with a wild, unsettling light. The transformation was not just a personal torment for Radan, it began to affect those around him, particularly his legions. Loyal soldiers who had served under Radan's banner for years started to feel the strain of their leader's deteriorating condition. The general's orders became increasingly erratic and dangerous, often sending troops into unwinnable battles or demanding impossible feats. The morale of his army waned as confusion and fear took hold. Caelid, once a region bolstered by its military strength, started to fray at the edges as Radan's madness mirrored in the disarray of his governance. The impact on Caelid was profound. The land, which had thrived under Radan's strategic leadership, now suffered from neglect and misrule. Bandits and wild creatures, once kept at bay by the disciplined legions, began to encroach on villages and trade routes. The region's infrastructure crumbled without the oversight of its once great leader, and famine and disease started to spread through neglected towns and fortresses. Amid this chaos, Radan's inner circle of advisors attempted to shield the region from their leader's madness. They concocted stories of Radan's involvement in distant campaigns to explain his absence from the public eye, while scrambling to maintain order. However, as Radan's condition worsened, he became increasingly reclusive, confining himself to his fortress, surrounded by artifacts and tomes about celestial prophecies and cosmic powers, further indulging his obsession with the stars that had cursed him. The tipping point came during what would later be known as the Battle of the Scorched Plains. where Radan, in a rare public appearance, led his troops against a massive invasion by rival demigods. In the thick of battle, Radan's strategic genius, which could have turned the tide, was overshadowed by his madness. He turned on his own soldiers, mistaking them for enemy combatants. The resulting confusion and carnage were catastrophic, decimating a significant portion of his army and allowing the enemy forces to claim a bitter victory. In the aftermath, the once unquestioned loyalty of his legions fractured. Some saw their leader's madness as a sign of divine retribution or a test of their faith. Others, more pragmatically, sought to distance themselves from the doomed general. A few of his most loyal commanders, heartbroken and desperate, confined Radan to his fortress, claiming he was struck by an enemy's curse during battle, hoping to salvage what remained of their honor and protect the region from further ruin. Radan's fortress became his prison, and over time rumors of the mad demigod's lamentations echoed across the region, turning into tales told in hushed tones. Caelid, once a proud and fearsome realm under the rule of a strategic genius, was left to contend with the ruins of his legacy, an enduring testament to the destructive power of the star's curse. The fall of General Radan not only changed the fate of a hero, but reshaped the destiny of an entire region, marking a poignant chapter in the troubled history of the lands between. Story 5. In the shadow of the shattering, as the lands between fractured under the weight of the demigod's ambitions, a band of tarnished arose who chose a path untethered to thrones or power. These were the nomadic ashes, wanderers of forgotten lands, seekers of truths hidden beneath the myths and ruins that littered the realm. Disenchanted with the ceaseless strife, they roamed far from the conflict, believing the true essence of the lands between could be found not in dominion, but in understanding its ancient mysteries. The nomadic ashes comprised a motley assembly of Soul's Edda, a lore keeper ousted from the Academy of Raya Lucaria for her radical theories Thorn, a former knight whose disillusionment with the Golden Order spurred his departure, and Mara, a mystic who communicated with the spirits of the land. Together they traversed landscapes marred by war but rich in history, each step forward a page turned in the world's vast and forgotten storybook. Their journey first led them to the ruins of Eskar, a site omitted from popular maps and songs. The ruins were said to be the remnants of a civilization that predated even the Erdtree's saplings. As the group delved into the shadowed halls and broken spires, Edda deciphered the ancient script engraved on the stones, revealing tales of a society that thrived on wisdom rather than conquest. The civilization had mastered a harmony with the natural world, drawing energy from ley lines that intersected beneath their city. This knowledge sparked a fervor in the nomadic ashes to rediscover and protect these lines, hoping to restore a fragment of the land's lost balance. Further north, hidden in the mists of the Weeping Peninsula, the group stumbled upon the Whispering Groves. Here the trees themselves murmured in the ancient tongue of the primeval forest, their leaves rustling with secrets of the old world. Mara, attuning herself to the vibrations of the grove, communicated with the spirit of an ancient tree, which mourned the loss of the moon's reflection, a sacred pool that once mirrored the true intentions of those who gazed into its waters. Intrigued by this lore, the nomadic ashes vowed to uncover this lost pool, believing it could reveal the deeper motivations behind the shattering. Their quest for the moon's reflection led them to the caverns beneath the Silver Mountains, where the land's scars ran deep and old magic still whispered. Inside, Thorn's blade cleared the path of malevolent creatures mutated by the raw magic that bled from the mountain's veins. In the heart of the cavern, illuminated by the soft glow of moonstone clusters, they found the pool. As each member gazed into the water, not their reflections but their aspirations appeared. Edda saw a library of universal knowledge. Thorn envisioned a knighthood, devoted to protection, not conquest. Mara witnessed a convergence of all spirits in harmony. These visions strengthened their resolve to eschew the path of the tarnished called to the shattering. They understood that their destinies were not to be found in the pursuit of power over others, but in the cultivation of wisdom and the guardianship of the realm's deepest truths. Next, the group ventured into the forgotten sands of Aeonia. Rumors spoke of a buried temple where the stars of guidance were once crafted artifacts said to align one's soul with the celestial paths. Burrowing through the sands, the nomadic ashes uncovered this temple, its walls adorned with astrological charts and celestial diagrams. Here Edda's skills in the arcane arts shone as she rekindled the dormant magics of the temple, allowing Thorn and Mara to forge new stars of guidance. These stars, when held under the night sky, revealed paths laden with potent energies and hidden histories, guiding the group to other lost sites. Each site unearthed, each myth unraveled, the nomadic ashes wove the threads of old knowledge into a tapestry rich with the lands between's forgotten heritage. They shared these stories with those they met, planting seeds of curiosity and dissent against the blind pursuit of power through violence. Years passed, and the legends of the nomadic ashes spread like a quiet revolution across the lands between. In taverns, at campfires, and through the halls of fading kingdoms, tales were told of the wanderers who sought wisdom over dominion and peace over power. They became both myth and beacon, a symbol of the possibility of another way of life in a land torn by greed and war. Thus the nomadic ashes journeyed on, ever searching, ever learning. Their legacy was not written on the throne of demigods, but inscribed in the heart of the realm, a reminder that the true power of the lands between lay not in the soil it contested, but in the stories it held sacred. Story 6. In the shadowed waters of a secluded pond in the lands between, a curious and somewhat tragic transformation occurred, turning ordinary men and women into what were known as pot nobles. Among these transformed beings was Hamish, once a proud merchant of the realm whose ambition and subsequent curse led him down a path no less extraordinary than the heroes who sought the Elden Ring. Hamish's life before the transformation was marked by a relentless pursuit of wealth and magical artifacts. His obsession with obtaining rare items had brought him into contact with a mysterious sorcerer who promised Hamish unimaginable riches. The sorcerer, cloaked in shadows and deceit, offered him a magical potion. "Drink this," he had said, "and your eyes will be opened to treasures beyond your wildest dreams." Driven by greed, Hamish did not hesitate. The transformation was neither immediate nor painful, but it was irrevocable. Upon ingesting the potion, Hamish's body began to morph. His limbs retracted, his torso widened, and soon he found himself transformed into a large ceramic pot. The first moments were those of sheer terror and confusion. Hamish's thoughts remained intact, his mind as sharp as ever, but his new form was alien to him. He had become a pot noble, destined to live out his days in this new, rounded ceramic form. At first, Hamish felt an overwhelming sense of despair. His mobility was severely limited, and his interactions with the world around him had changed dramatically. No longer could he traverse the bustling marketplaces or travel across the realms. Instead, he was confined to the edges of a tranquil pond, submerged partly in its cool depths, alongside others who had fallen prey to similar fates. However, as days turned into months, Hamish began to experience the world from a new perspective. His senses, though altered, became attuned to the subtleties of his environment. He could feel the vibrations of the earth, the touch of the wind, and the changes in the light as day turned to night. His life, once consumed by the pursuit of wealth, now took on a slower, more reflective pace. It was during these long, contemplative days that Hamish discovered he retained a peculiar magical ability linked to his transformation. He could communicate with the other pot nobles telepathically, sharing thoughts and stories. This new form of interaction opened Hamish's eyes to the experiences and emotions of others, fostering a sense of community and belonging that he had never felt as a human. Moreover, Hamish and his fellow pot nobles discovered that they could still engage in trade, a vestige of their former lives that brought them a semblance of normalcy and purpose. Travelers and adventurers, drawn by curiosity or in search of rare items, would visit their pond. The pot nobles traded in karma, a magical currency they could manifest, exchanging it for goods and information. This commerce allowed Hamish to feel connected to the broader world, serving as a bridge between his past and present. As time passed, Hamish began to see his curse not as a punishment, but as a transformative journey, one that shifted his values from material wealth to the treasures of friendship and knowledge. His outlook on life deepened, imbued with the wisdom gained from his unique condition and the stories shared by those who visited his watery domain. One day, a young tarnished knight approached the pond. She was weary from her travels, her face etched with the scars of countless battles. Drawn by the legend of the pot nobles, she sought not treasures but wisdom. Hamish sensed a kindred spirit in her, a soul searching for meaning in a fractured world. Through their exchange, Hamish offered insights that only a being of his unique perspective could provide, advising her on the importance of balance and the understanding of one's true desires. In return, the knight shared tales of her adventures and the shifting landscapes of power throughout the lands between. Through these exchanges, Hamish realized that his impact on the world could still be profound. even from the confines of his ceramic form. His advice helped guide many who sought the Elden Ring, shaping their journeys in subtle but meaningful ways. Hamish's story, from a greedy merchant to a wise pot noble, became a legend whispered among the tarnished and other beings of the lands between. His transformation, once viewed as a cruel fate, was now seen as a vital part of his life's journey, a testament to the idea that even in the most unexpected transformations, there are lessons to be learned and new paths to be forged. Thus, in the reflective waters of his pond, Hamish found a new purpose, serving as a sage and friend to the wayward souls who ventured near, his life a strange but beautiful echo of the world's mysterious and magical nature. Story 7. In the hallowed halls of the Academy of Raya Lucaria, where knowledge was both the highest currency and the most dangerous weapon, there existed a young scholar named Selene. With a mind as sharp as obsidian and a curiosity unsated by the standard curricula, Selene delved deeper into the arcane and forbidden archives that many of her peers dared not touch. Her quest was driven by whispers of something beyond the ordinary teaching's greater runes, the fragments of order and chaos from which the world itself was woven. Selene's journey into the forbidden began one fateful evening, under the cloak of a starless night, when she stumbled upon an ancient text hidden in the neglected corner of the library's vast labyrinth of books. The tome was bound in shadowy leather and penned in an almost forgotten script that spoke of the greater runes. It suggested that these runes were not merely tools of power for the demigods, as commonly taught, but keystones in the architecture of reality itself. Driven by the thrill of the forbidden and the pure need to know, Selene spent countless nights translating and deciphering the cryptic texts. Each page turned was a step closer to understanding the fundamental forces that shaped the lands between. The runes, she learned, were imbued with the raw essence of the celestial laws that could be bent, or even broken, by those who wielded the runes. Her research revealed that each rune was not merely a symbol, but a gateway to accessing and manipulating the threads of reality. The greater runes contain power over life, death, time, and even the fabric of memory itself. This knowledge, forbidden for its danger, was what the founders of Raya Lucaria had deemed too perilous for the hands of the ambitious or the mad. Selene knew the implications of her discoveries were immense. Such power could change the order of the lands between, potentially even halting or reversing the shattering itself. However, the more she learned, the more she felt the eyes of unseen watchers upon her. The Academy, a place of scholarly pursuit, was also a nest of spies and guardians who ensured certain knowledge remained buried. The inevitable happened one stormy night when Selene was summoned to the chamber of the Grand Scholar, the enigmatic and powerful head of Raya Lucaria, her heart heavy with both dread and defiance. Selene entered the chamber, her findings tucked in the folds of her robe. "You have delved into shadows that are meant to remain untouched," the Grand Scholar said, his voice echoing in the dimly lit room. "The knowledge of the greater runes is sealed for a reason. Do you understand the forces you are attempting to unleash? Selene, her resolve fortified by the righteousness of her quest, argued for the potential good that the knowledge could bring. She spoke of healing the lands between, of restoring balance and order. But the grand scholar, wise in the ways of power and its corrupting lure, warned her of the calamity that could follow the same calamity that had led to the Academy's stringent prohibitions. The meeting concluded with a dire ultimatum: cease her research and have her status and safety within the Academy preserved, or persist and be expelled, her work possibly leading her to ruin or madness, as it had for many before her. Torn between her duty to the broader world and the safety of the sanctum she had grown to love, Selene made a choice that would alter her path forever. She decided to leave Raya Lucaria, taking her research with her into the wider world, determined to find a way to use the knowledge of the greater runes for the greater good. Her departure was not unnoticed. As she ventured beyond the Academy's protective spells and into the anarchic expanses of the lands between, she found herself pursued not only by agents of the Academy, but by other darker forces that sought the secrets she carried. Her life became one of constant movement and concealment, yet her resolve never wavered. Years passed, and legends grew around the mysterious figure known as the Rune Scholar, a woman who could bend reality to her will. Selene, with a select group of trusted allies she gathered on her journey, continued to research the greater runes, seeking ways to seal away their most dangerous aspects while harnessing their potential for healing and restoration. The repercussions of her work rippled across the lands between, subtly shifting the balance of power and knowledge. While some saw her as a hero, others branded her a heretic, a danger to the established order. Yet, amid the myriad challenges and the constant threat of discovery, Selene's quest illuminated a fundamental truth: knowledge was a double-edged sword, capable of cutting through darkness or plunging the world deeper into it, depending on the hands that wielded it. Her tale, woven into the fabric of the lands between, served as a beacon for future scholars, a testament to the relentless pursuit of truth, regardless of the peril such a journey entails. Story 8. Farum Azula, the ancient city of dragons and thunder, was once perched atop the highest peaks of the lands between, its spires touching the skies and its foundations rooted in legend. Renowned as a sanctum for both the celestial dragons and the scholars who revered them, Farum Azula was a nexus of arcane knowledge and draconic power. However, its final days were marked by a cataclysm of such magnitude that it would pass into legend, a whispered tale of hubris and destruction. The beginning of the end came subtly, with tremors felt in the rhythm of the thunderstorms that perpetually shrouded the city. These storms, once the source of the city's vitality and power, grew erratic and increasingly violent. The scholars at the Observatory of Azula, who charted the stars and the patterns of the world, were the first to notice the shift. They observed a disturbing misalignment in the celestial configurations, a sign of impending disaster they could scarcely believe. As the tremors grew stronger, the dragons of Faro Missoula began to show signs of unease. These creatures, usually so attuned to the ebb and flow of the cosmos, became restless. Their roars filled the air, a dissonant chorus that echoed off the mountainsides. The elder dragons, ancient beings who had watched centuries unfold, circled the city in ever-tightening spirals, their eyes reflecting the stormy skies with a foreboding glint. In the midst of this growing chaos, the city's leaders convened a council. Among them was the High Seer Ixion, who had long studied the city's sacred texts. He spoke of an ancient prophecy, seldom believed and rarely spoken, that foretold the unraveling of the heavens. A cataclysm that would arise when mankind's reach exceeded its grasp on the arcane. Many scoffed at Ixion's warnings, attributing the city's disturbances to mere fluctuations in the magical currents. But as the skies grew darker and the thunder louder, denial became harder to maintain. The final days approached with a rapid descent into chaos. Lightning, not merely striking but bombarding the city, ignited fires that burned with unnatural ferocity, fueled by the magical energies that saturated the city's architecture. The dragons, sensing the impending doom, began to flee, their great wings beating against the winds that howled through the city. Some sought to carry away their human allies, while others, driven by instinct, abandoned the city to its fate. Amidst the destruction, the scholars and mages of Faro Missoula scrambled to salvage the sum of their knowledge. Ancient tomes and arcane instruments were gathered with a frantic urgency, as the very ground beneath them cracked and groaned. The observatory of Azula, once a pinnacle of scholarly achievement, became the scene of a desperate last stand. Here, Ixion and a cadre of the city's most powerful mages gathered to enact a ritual they hoped might stabilize the city's core, thereby averting total annihilation. As the ritual commenced, the energy within the city reached a fever pitch. The fabric of reality itself seemed to tear, creating rifts that spewed forth energies too potent and wild to be contained. The mages poured their own life forces into the ritual, the sacrifice as noble as it was futile. Outside, the storms raged with a wrath that seemed personal, a celestial vendetta against the hubris of Faro Missoula. In the city's final moments, as the ritual reached its crescendo, there was a brief, eerie calm. The air shimmered with energy, the storms paused, and a silence fell over Faro Missoula. Then, with a sound like the world itself splitting apart, the city was torn from its foundations. The ritual had failed, not stabilizing but instead dispersing the city's energies in an explosive release that sent shockwaves through the lands between. Faro Missoula was no more. Its ruins, scattered and smouldering, lay strewn across the peaks like the bones of some great beast felled in battle. The dragons that had escaped roamed the skies as nomads, mourning their lost sanctuary. The few scholars who survived carried with them the remnants of their knowledge, their tales imbued with the wisdom and sorrow of a city lost to its own greatness. The destruction of Fara Mazula served as a somber reminder of the dangers of delving too deeply into the arcane, a lesson whispered in the halls of academies and echoed in the myths of the lands between. The city's last days, marked by fire and thunder, remained a testament to the ephemeral nature of power and the enduring resilience of those who seek to learn from history's most tragic tales. Story 9. The Night of Black Knives was a pivotal moment in the history of the lands between, shrouded in secrecy and betrayal. My role as a secret observer, stationed deep within the shadows of the court, allowed me an unobstructed view of the unfolding conspiracy that would alter the course of history. This clandestine event was not born out of sudden impulse, but was the culmination of years of quiet dissent, simmering rivalries, and hidden agendas. The primary architects were a faction of disillusioned nobles and disillusioned knights, led by the enigmatic and charismatic figure known only as Marwyn the Silent. Marwyn had once been a loyal servant to the ruling demigod, but had grown increasingly critical of the despotic rule that suffocated any semblance of freedom or progress. The motivations behind the Night of Black Knives were complex. At its core, it was an attempt to overthrow a tyrannical regime that had exploited its subjects for too long. However, beneath this noble facade lay darker ambitions. Some participants were driven by a lust for power, others by revenge against personal slights, and a few by the promise of unlocking hidden arcane knowledge that the demigod had hoarded. As the night approached, the air within the castle walls thickened with tension. The conspirators moved with stealth, communicating through coded messages and clandestine meetings. Swords were sharpened, poisons prepared, and loyalties tested. Every participant knew the stakes were high, and the penalty for failure was death. The plan was executed on a moonless night, a detail the conspirators believed would be an omen of their dark purpose. They wore black cloaks to blend into the shadows, their faces hidden behind masks that mirrored the death they were about to deliver. As a secret observer, I watched from my hidden vantage point as the castle, a giant, sleeping beast, was infiltrated by these shadows. The first sign of what was to come was the muted sound of a scuffle in the lower corridors, quickly stifled. One by one, the demigod's most trusted advisors were silently dispatched, their unsuspecting guards neutralized without raising the alarm. Marwyn the Silent led a group directly to the royal chambers, where the demigod slept, unaware of the betrayal that crept ever closer. As they reached the royal quarters, a tense silence fell. The door was quietly breached, and the assassins slipped inside. The clash that ensued was brief but brutal. The demigod, though caught off guard, was a formidable opponent, wielding ancient powers that nearly turned the tide. However, the sheer number of attackers overwhelmed any resistance. The assassination of the demigod was a gruesome spectacle. Marwyn delivered the final blow, a symbolic act meant to signify the end of tyranny. However, the aftermath was not as the conspirators had envisioned. Instead of liberation, chaos ensued. The power vacuum led to infighting among the factions that had participated in the coup. The nobility, the military, and various other groups all vied for control, plunging the realm into further turmoil. In the days following the Night of Black Knives, the political landscape of the lands between transformed dramatically. New alliances were forged in haste, while old ones crumbled. The once centralized power of the demigods splintered into warring factions, each claiming legitimacy over the other. The common folk, whose interests were so often cited as the motivation for the coup, found themselves no better off under the rule of the conspirators than they had been under the demigod. As the secret observer, my records of the event became one of the few unbiased accounts of what had transpired. These writings, though dangerous to possess, circulated among a select few, ensuring that the truth of the Night of Black Knives would not be lost to the manipulations of those now in power. Ultimately, the Night of Black Knives did not bring about the hoped-for era of peace and reform. Instead, it served as a grim reminder of the perils of power and the ease with which noble intentions can be corrupted by darker desires. The realm remained fractured, its people divided, and the shadow of that night continued to loom over the lands between, a stark testament to the consequences of betrayal and ambition. Story 10. In the dark annals of the lands between, the omen creatures occupy a sorrowful chapter, marked by fear, persecution, and a tragic destiny. Born under ominous signs, these beings were once humans, cursed from birth with deformities and powers that unnerved the common folk and the high court alike. Their story is one of struggle, a quest for acceptance in a realm that viewed them as harbingers of disaster. The origin of the omen creatures was intertwined with the ancient prophecies that spoke of the Earth Tree's decay. It was believed that each omen was a physical manifestation of the Earth Tree's growing corruption, their malformed features reflecting the imperfections within the sacred tree. As such, omens were both feared and revered, considered as both signs of the divine will and portents of inevitable ruin. Among these cursed beings was Veril, an omen with eyes that gleamed like starlight and hands that could manipulate the very essence of the night. Unlike his brethren, who often succumbed to despair or rage, Veril sought to understand the nature of his existence, to find a purpose beyond the superstitions that shackled his kind to misery. Veril's journey began in the secluded caverns of the Omen's Hollow, a refuge where many of his kind were banished. The Hollow was both sanctuary and prison, a place where omens could exist away from the prying eyes and sharpened blades of the outside world. Here, under the dim luminescence of luminescent fungi, the omens forged a semblance of society, their shared curse binding them in solidarity. However, the peace within the Hollow was a fragile veneer, frequently shattered by internal strife and the ever-looming threat of invasions from bounty hunters and zealots. It was during one such invasion that Veril's fate took a pivotal turn. Armed with nothing but his wits and the latent powers he had long feared to wield, he repelled the intruders, using his abilities to cloak his brethren in shadows and misdirection. His success in protecting the Hollow earned him respect and a newfound confidence in his capabilities. and driven by a desire to reshape the destiny of his people, Veril ventured beyond the Hollow. He travelled the lands between, from the scorched remnants of Fara Mazula to the bustling streets of the royal capital, seeking wisdom in ancient texts and the counsel of other exiled beings. His travels unveiled a forgotten truth: the omens were not merely byproducts of corruption, but were integral to the cosmic balance, their powers capable of both destruction and renewal. With this knowledge, Veril returned to the Hollow, intent on transforming it from a refuge of the damned into a bastion of hope. He began by teaching his fellow omens to harness their inherent abilities, not as weapons of vengeance but as tools for building. Slowly the Hollow transformed, its caverns lit with bioluminescent gardens and its chambers filled with the sounds of industry and art. Yet peace was still an elusive dream. The wider world remained hostile, and many omens, hardened by lifetimes of rejection, were reluctant to embrace Veril's vision of integration and peace. The turning point came when a plague struck a nearby human settlement, a calamity that could have easily spelled doom for the embattled community. Seeing an opportunity to prove the worth of his people, Veril proposed a daring plan. He and a group of omens skilled in the healing arts would go to the settlement and use their abilities to cure the afflicted. This act of goodwill was met with suspicion and hostility at first, but as the plague receded, attitudes began to change. The humans, once quick to scorn the omens, now spoke of their gratitude and respect. This shift marked a new beginning for Veril and the omens, though prejudice and fear were not eradicated overnight. The walls between the two peoples began to erode. The omens, led by Veril, slowly reintegrated into the society of the lands between, their presence no longer a sign of impending doom but a testament to the potential for redemption and change. Veril's legacy was a complex tapestry of triumph and sorrow, a reminder that the lines between curse and gift are often blurred, shaped by the hands that wield them. His life, a bridge between dark and light, remains a beacon for all who dare to defy the fate written by the stars, proving that even those born under the darkest omens can illuminate the world with their deeds. Story 11. In the expansive realm of the lands between, where the Erdtree's grandeur dominated the skyline, its lesser siblings, the minor Erdtrees, dotted the landscape. These smaller yet vital trees, scattered across various terrains from lush valleys to harsh mountainsides, were not merely offshoots of the grand Erdtree but centers of life and magic in their own right. To protect these sacred sites, a dedicated cadre of guardians was appointed, warriors and sages known as the Sylvan Knights. The Sylvan Knights were chosen not by monarchs or high priests, but by the Erdtrees themselves, through a mystical selection that transcended human understanding. It was said that when a minor Erdtree's previous guardian passed, the tree would release spores that scattered with the wind, seeking out the next protector. These spores were drawn to those with innate potential for greatness, regardless of their origins or standings within their communities. Once chosen, the candidates would experience vivid dreams and visions, guiding them towards the Erd tree that called for them. Upon their arrival, they underwent the Rite of Roots, a secretive ceremony known only to the Silver Knights. During this rite, the Erd tree would intertwine its roots with the Protector, imbuing them with unique powers that aligned with the nature of their respective trees. Thus, the guardianship of the minor Erd trees was as much a spiritual calling as it was a duty. Each guardian wielded powers reflective of their Erd tree's essence. For instance, Lysander, the guardian of the verdant Eclipse Erd tree, located in the Evergreen Sanctuary, had the ability to accelerate the growth of plant life around him. He could summon thick vines to entangle enemies, or create barriers of thorns to protect the Erd tree from harm. His presence alone made the sanctuary a labyrinth of flora, nearly impassable to those he deemed unworthy. In the frozen expanses of the white thorn tundra, where the frost veil Erd tree stood, its guardian, Mara, possessed the power to manipulate ice and snow. She could conjure blizzards that disoriented invaders and form ice constructs to battle those who dared to threaten her charge. Under her watch, the frost veil Erd tree thrived amidst the harsh climate, its roots warm and vibrant against the biting cold. The guardians not only protected their Erd trees from physical threats, but also from the corruption that seeped from the lands between. Dark magic and the ambitions of rogue demigods posed a constant hazard, seeking to exploit the Erd tree's power for their nefarious ends. The Sylvan Knights were thus also versed in ancient rites and counter-magics, which they used to cleanse their sites of any malignant forces. The story of Thalia, guardian of the Emberlight Erd tree, is particularly notable. Her tree stood in the midst of the Ashen Plains, an area frequently besieged by marauders and corrupted creatures drawn to the Erd tree's radiant warmth. Thalia wielded the power of fire, not the destructive blaze of warfare, but a controlled flame that could heal and purify. She was skilled in the art of fire runes, using them to create protective circles around the Erd tree and to light the dark paths for lost travelers. One fateful night, a coalition of warlords, drawn by the tales of the Erd tree's power, converged on the Ashen Plains, intent on seizing the Emberlight Erd tree. Thalia, prepared yet vastly outnumbered, tapped into the deepest reserves of her power. She cast a grand fire rune, larger and more complex than any she had conjured before. The rune ignited a ring of fire around the Erd tree, a blazing barrier that was both shield and spectacle. As the warlords hesitated, the minor Erd tree itself acted. It glowed with an intense light, its power bolstered by Thalia's rune. From its branches, droplets of molten light fell like rain upon the Ashen Plains, healing the scorched earth and renewing the vitality of the land. Witnessing this miraculous event, the warlords were overwhelmed, not just by Thalia's defiance, but by the sheer sanctity of the site they sought to defile. One by one they withdrew, their hearts changed by the power of the Emberlight Erd tree. Thalia's victory that night became a legend, a story that traversed the lands between, inspiring awe and reverence for the guardians of the minor Erd trees. Her feat exemplified the deep connection between the Sylvan Knights and their charges, a bond forged in the mystical interplay of dreams, duty, and the raw essence of the natural world. The Sylvan Knights, each a protector of a minor Erd tree, stood as symbols of the resilience and sanctity of nature against the creeping shadows of corruption and greed. Their tales, woven into the fabric of the lands between, served as enduring reminders of the balance between humanity and the mystic forces that shaped their world. Story 12. In the ethereal depths of the lands between lies the Siofra River, a mysterious and timeless flow of water that courses through the realm not merely as a physical presence but as a spiritual nexus. The river has been a witness to the ages, its waters reflecting not just the sky but the very soul of the land. Among its ancient watchers is Elden, a being whose existence is as intertwined with the Siofra River as the water is with the riverbed. Elden, often whispered about in legends as the warden of the waters, is neither fully human nor spirit, but something in between a naiad born from the river's first dawn. As old as the river itself, she has watched over its waters from a time before the shattering, before even the rise of the demigods. Her form is fluid as the river, able to shift from water to a more solid, humanoid appearance. Her eyes, deep and blue, carry the calm of the river but also its hidden force. For millennia, Elden has observed the countless transformations of the Siofra River. She has seen it grow from a mere trickling stream, whispered into existence by the melting snows of the distant Frostpeak Mountains, into the mighty river that now serves as a crucial vein of the lands between. The river has been a boundary and a bridge, a giver of life and a receiver of the dead, carrying away warriors fallen in battles, whose names have long faded from memory. The Siofra River is more than just a body of water for Elden. It is a repository of the realm's memories. Beneath its serene surface lie secrets drowned over eons, lost artifacts, the remains of forgotten creatures and echoes of ancient spells so old that their purposes have been lost to time. Elden, through her connection to the river, keeps these secrets, guarding them against those who would plunder the river for its mystical properties. Her existence has been largely solitary, marked by the rare interactions with the few who can sense her presence. These are usually the spiritually attuned mystics and seers or the desperate souls seeking something lost, something they believe the river can return or reveal. Elden aids these wanderers as she sees fit, guiding them to find what they seek in the waters, or more often, helping them understand that some things that are lost must remain so. One of the most significant events Elden witnessed was the Great Flood during the era of King Ealdwine, a ruler so cruel that the legends claim the river itself rose against him. As Ealdwine's armies marched along its banks, intent on conquering the neighboring realms, Elden called upon the ancient spirits of water, those bound to the river by old, primordial magic. Together they summoned a surge that overflowed the banks and inundated the fields, halting the army's advance and washing them away in a furious deluge. This act reshaped the landscape around the Siofra River, creating new waterways and lakes, and marking a new chapter in the river's long history. But not all changes have been wrought by conflict or cataclysm. Some of Eowyn's most cherished moments are the quiet centuries, where the river's course gently shifted, creating new ecosystems and nurturing life. The riverbanks have bloomed with civilizations, seen the rise and fall of cities, and the quiet retreats of hermits seeking wisdom by the water's edge. Eowyn has nurtured these developments, occasionally revealing herself to those who live by her waters, imparting knowledge of the natural world and the ancient magics that bind it. In recent times, as the shattering scent ripples across the lands between, the Siofra River has felt the stirrings of ancient magics awoken and new powers seeking dominion. Eowyn perceives a coming change, one that might alter the river's course more dramatically than any flood or drought. Yet her resolve remains as fluid and enduring as the waters she protects. She prepares to defend the river, rallying the water spirits and ancient beings bound to its depths, ready to ensure that the Siofra River continues to flow as a source of life and mystery. Through Eowyn's eyes, the story of the Siofra River is a tapestry woven with threads of water and time, each strand a tale of resilience and transformation. Her life and the river are a continuous dance of ebb and flow, a reminder of the enduring power of nature in the face of the ever-changing fortunes of the realms and their rulers. The mysteries of the Siofra River, guarded and guided by Eowyn, remain a deep well of ancient truths, holding the past and the future in its reflective depths. Story 13. In the dimly lit corners of the lands between, where the veil between life and death is at its thinnest, there dwelt a reclusive sorcerer named Theldrin, known in whispered tales as the Weaver of Shadows. Theldrin's obsession with the boundary that separates the living from the dead had driven him to seclusion, away from the prying eyes and moral judgments of the world. His quest was singular: to craft the Rune of Death, a powerful and forbidden sigil believed to control the very essence of mortality. Theldrin's journey into the arcane arts of death began when he was still a young mage at the Academy of Raya Lucaria. Amongst the dusty scrolls and forbidden tomes, he stumbled upon an ancient manuscript. It was partially destroyed, but what remained spoke of a primordial language that could influence the foundational energies of life and death. The manuscript was cryptic, its teachings dark and complex, hinting at a rune powerful enough to sway the balance of existence. Driven by this discovery, Theldrin delved deeper into the forbidden studies, his fascination growing as he uncovered more about the ancient and potent magics. But his research was not without consequence. The more he learned, the more he felt the life within him wane. The darkness of the rune's power began to seep into his soul, its shadowy tendrils leeching his vitality slowly, a sacrifice he was initially unaware he was making. His physical transformation was gradual. His skin paled to an almost translucent white, his eyes deepened to the darkest black, and his presence seemed to chill the air around him. The other scholars began to shun him, whispering that Theldrin had trespassed into realms no mortal ought to explore. Eventually he left the academy, his once promising career shattered by his dark pursuits. He retreated to a forgotten fortress deep in the mists of the cursed moors, a place as bleak and isolated as his ambitions. In the solitude of his fortress, Theldrin's experiments with the Rune of Death became more daring and dangerous. He started with the lesser creatures of the moors, imbuing them with the rune and observing its effects as life slowly drained from their bodies, only to be rekindled at his command. Each experiment brought him closer to mastering the rune, but at the cost of his humanity and the natural order surrounding his abode. As Theldrin's mastery grew, so did the rune's demands. It required a life force greater than that of animals or plants. It craved a soul rich with experiences and emotions. Realizing the gravity of this requirement, Theldrin faced a moral dilemma that would define his path forward. Could he sacrifice another human to achieve his ultimate goal? His heart, now as cold as the shadows he conjured, decided upon a yes. It was during a rare visit to a nearby village under the guise of a hooded traveller that Theldrin found his victim, a dying old man, abandoned and alone, seemingly waiting for death. Theldrin approached him as a healer, offering a remedy to ease his passing. Grateful and unsuspecting, the old man agreed, not knowing that Theldrin's intentions were far darker. Back at his fortress, Theldrin performed the ritual. The Rune of Death was etched into the very soul of the old man, its lines written with an ink as dark as oblivion itself. As the rune took hold, the old man's life force flowed into Theldrin, and for a moment the sorcerer felt the power of life and death coursing through him, a godlike surge that was intoxicating. However, the triumph was short-lived. The violation of natural law could not go unnoticed by the cosmos. That night, as Theldrin revelled in his newfound power, shadows darker than any he had summoned before gathered around his fortress. They were the sentinels of the Vale, ancient guardians of life and death, drawn to the disturbance Theldrin had caused. The sentinel's judgment was swift and severe. Theldrin was stripped of his mortal form, his essence bound to the Rune of Death itself, forever to serve as a guardian of the boundary he had sought to control. His fortress crumbled, becoming a tomb and a warning to any who would follow in his footsteps. Thus the tale of Theldrin ends, his life and ambitions sealed within the ruins of his fortress in the cursed moors. The Rune of Death, now guarded by his spectral form, remains a potent symbol of the peril that comes from tampering with the fundamental laws of nature. It is a story whispered across the lands between, a grim reminder of the price of forbidden knowledge and the eternal vigilance required to guard against the darkness that lurks in the hearts of men. Story 14. In the grand tapestry of the lands between, few events carried the weight and consequence of the marriage between Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, and Radigan of the Golden Order. This union, steeped in both political maneuvering and deep personal implications, significantly influenced the realms of academia and magic, reshaping the landscape of power in profound ways. Renala, before her ascension as Queen of the Full Moon, was renowned throughout the lands for her unmatched prowess in lunar magics and her deep connection to the arcane arts. She presided over the Academy of Raya Lucaria, a prestigious institution dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and the mystical forces that govern the cosmos. Renala's rule was marked by a period of great enlightenment and expansion of magical disciplines, attracting scholars and mages from distant realms. Radagon, on the other hand, was a rising figure in the Golden Order, a faction that embraced the rigid doctrines of the Erdtree and its celestial mandates. Radagon's reputation as a warrior of unmatched skill and a strategist with a keen mind for both politics and theology made him a key figure in the Order's ambitions to spread its influence across the lands between. The marriage between Renala and Radagon was initially proposed as a political alliance, intended to bridge the divide between the lunar mysticism championed by Renala and the solar theocracy of the Golden Order. Leaders from both factions believed that this union would harmonize the opposing ideologies, creating a balance between the mystical and the divine, thereby stabilizing the realm's fractious political landscape. However, beyond the political implications, there were personal stakes involved. Renala, who had always been a seeker of knowledge, was intrigued by the possibility of exploring the sacred doctrines of the Golden Order from within. She saw in Radagon not just a political ally, but a partner in the quest for a deeper understanding of the world's arcane mysteries. Radagon, for his part, was drawn to Renala's profound connection to the arcane energies that he had been taught to revere from a distance. His admiration for her intellect and her spiritual prowess grew into a genuine affection that transcended the initial pragmatic considerations of their union. As the wedding approached, the halls of Raya Lucaria were abuzz with preparations, blending the silver and gold motifs of the moon and the sun. The ceremony itself was a spectacle of magical and divine symbolism, attended by dignitaries and scholars, knights and seers, all witnessing the historic union. The impact of their marriage was immediate and far-reaching. In the academic realm, the Academy of Raya Lucaria saw an influx of resources and patronage from the Golden Order, allowing for an expansion of its curriculum to include studies in divine magic and theology, previously deemed heretical. This integration led to groundbreaking discoveries in magic, including hybrid disciplines that combined lunar and solar energies, creating new forms of spellcraft and enchantments that bolstered both the Academy's prestige and its practical influence in the wider world. However, the marriage also sowed seeds of dissent. Purists on both sides viewed the blending of practices as a dilution of their traditional beliefs. This discontent simmered beneath the surface, occasionally erupting into scholarly debates and at times into open confrontations. Renala and Radagon, now joint rulers of a culturally and spiritually hybrid court, had to navigate these treacherous waters, often making compromises to maintain the delicate balance they had created. Moreover, the union influenced the magical realm by shifting the locus of magical discourse from isolated scholarly pursuit to a matter of public and divine significance. Magic was no longer just a tool for understanding the cosmos, but was now integral to the governance and spiritual life of the populace. This shift significantly altered how magic was taught, practiced and regulated. Years into their marriage, the effects of their union continued to ripple through the lands between. When strife eventually came to the lands between, as it inevitably does in lands governed by such powerful forces, their union acted as both a beacon of hope and a point of contention. Rennala and Radagon found themselves at the heart of conflicts and resolutions, their personal bond tested by the very forces they had sought to unite. Their story, rich with love, ambition and intrigue, became a legend, a testament to the power of union between differing creeds and the profound impact such a union could have on the world around it. Rennala and Radagon's marriage was not just a pivotal moment in their lives, but a defining event for the entire lands between, influencing the realms of magic and power for generations to come. Story 15. In the outer reaches of the lands between, where the fabric of reality thinned and the cosmic energies flowed freely, there lived a seer named Myrddin, gifted with the sight, a rare ability to peer beyond the veils of the mundane world into the swirling chaos of the cosmos. Myrddin spent his days in solitude atop the ancient observatory of Tenebris. From this vantage, his eyes, now milky white and unfocused on the earthly realm, scanned the celestial movements for signs and omens. It was during a particularly clear night, as the twin moons of the lands between converged in a rare celestial alignment, that Myrddin's sight pierced through a cosmic veil that had never before been breached. He saw a vision that chilled his very soul, a behemoth stirring in the depths of the cosmos, an entity of unimaginable power and primordial rage. This was the Elden beast, a creature woven from the fabric of the cosmos itself, its awakening foretold to bring about an era of cataclysm and reformation. The vision was vivid and visceral. Myrddin saw the Elden beast rising from its slumber, the stars themselves recoiling in fear as its massive limbs stretched across the heavens, its eyes burning like dying stars, opened with a slow, inevitable dread, fixating their gaze upon the lands between. The seer understood in that moment that the awakening of such a creature would not merely alter the fate of one realm, but would send ripples across the fabric of reality, potentially unraveling the threads that held the cosmos together. Shaken by the revelation, Myrddin descended from his observatory. He knew he must act, must warn the denizens of the lands between of what was to come. As he journeyed towards the royal capital, where kings and scholars might heed his warning, Myrddin's thoughts were tormented by the implications of his vision. How could one deter a force that predated the stars themselves? What power did mere mortals hold against a cosmic entity? Arriving at the capital, the reception Myrddin received was mixed. While some scholars and mystics revered his knowledge and foresight, many political figures dismissed his warnings as the ramblings of an old seer out of touch with the tangible issues of the realm. The court politicians and military strategists found it difficult to grasp the existential threat described by Myrddin, accustomed as they were to adversaries who could be seen, battled, and negotiated with on the physical plane. Nevertheless, Myrddin's persistence gradually began to sway the minds of a few influential figures within the court. particularly those with a deeper understanding or fear of the arcane and celestial. Among them was Lady Seraphine, a high counselor with a keen interest in prophetic phenomena, who became an ally in his quest to prepare the realm. She arranged for Merdin to present his findings to a gathering of the realm's most powerful wizards, scholars, and diviners at the Hall of Echoes, a place where magic and destiny were debated and shaped. During the council, Merdin shared his vision with a fervor that shook even the most skeptical of listeners. He described the Elden beast's cosmic nature, its potential pathways through the stars, and the signs preceding its arrival: celestial disturbances, the warping of magical energies, and a palpable sense of dread that would creep into the dreams of the sensitive and powerful alike. The council was divided. Some called for immediate action, proposing to scour ancient texts for ways to reinforce the realm's magical defenses, or to possibly communicate with the Elden beast in hopes of appeasing it. Others argued that the resources of the realm would be better spent fortifying cities and preparing for physical combat, despite Merdin's insistence that conventional weapons would hold no sway over such a cosmic entity. Amid the debates, Merdin's revelations stirred a broader public awareness. News of the cosmic seer's dire prophecy spread through the capital and beyond, sowing a mix of fear, fascination, and fatalism among the populace. Pilgrimages to ancient sites began, with many seeking answers or solace in religion and mysticism. Cults dedicated to the Elden beast sprouted, some worshipping it as a divine cleanser, others fearing it as an end-times harbinger. The response of the realm's leaders and the populace's growing unrest pressured the king to take decisive action. He declared the formation of the Celestial Watch, a coalition of mages and scholars tasked with finding a way to either prevent the awakening of the Elden beast or mitigate its impact should it fully awaken. Merdin was appointed as the head of this coalition, given ample resources but also the burden of expectation. As the preparations advanced, Merdin continued to monitor the celestial signs and refine his understanding of the prophecy. His days and nights blended into a continuous vigil, his mind and spirit ever attuned to the cosmic movements. He knew that each passing day brought the realm closer to the foreseen cataclysm, yet he also held on to a sliver of hope that human ingenuity and courage could, perhaps, alter even the most dire of destinies. In the time that followed, the lands between braced itself against an uncertain future, fortified not only by stone and spell but by the newfound unity brought about by a common existential threat. Merdin, the seer who had foreseen the awakening, stood at the heart of this maelstrom, a beacon of both warning and wisdom, guiding the realm through its darkest and most uncertain hours. His resolve never wavered, driven by the belief that even against cosmic odds, the actions of the brave and the wise could still carve a path of survival, if not salvation, for all. Story 13. In the dimly lit corners of the lands between, where the veil between life and death is at its thinnest, there dwelt a reclusive sorcerer named Theldrin, known in whispered tales as the Weaver of Shadows. Thildrin's obsession with the boundary that separates the living from the dead. Story 16. Godwyn the Golden, often hailed as the beacon of the Golden Order, began his ascent in an era marked by turmoil and the waning influence of celestial doctrines. From his youth, Godwyn was distinguished not only by his radiant charisma and golden hair, from which he derived his name, but also by his profound sense of destiny. He believed himself to be a chosen instrument of the Erd Tree, destined to restore and expand the influence of the Golden Order across the lands between. His rise to power was neither immediate nor accidental. Born to a minor noble family within the Order, Godwyn spent his early years studying the ancient texts and doctrines that formed the bedrock of his society's beliefs. His sharp intellect and eloquent speech made him a favorite in the court and among the clergy, who saw in him a leader capable of navigating the complexities of their time. As a young man, Godwyn witnessed the growing disenchantment of the populace with the Golden Order's leaders, whom many viewed as corrupt and detached from the hardships of their subjects. This disconnection had allowed fringe groups and heretical sects to flourish, threatening the fabric of the realm with their divisive teachings. It was during this period of uncertainty that Godwyn found his calling. He envisioned a revitalized Golden Order, one that would not only reclaim its moral authority but would also serve as a beacon of unity and strength for all. Godwyn's strategy was multifaceted. He began by advocating for reforms within the Order, pushing for transparency and the eradication of corruption. His charismatic advocacy earned him the support of the younger members of the Order and the general populace, who longed for a leader who could articulate their frustrations and hopes. To solidify his vision, Godwyn embarked on a series of campaigns against the heretical sects that had taken root in the outskirts of the realm. These campaigns were both military and ideological. Godwyn led his forces in battle, demonstrating personal courage and strategic acumen that elevated his status as a leader. However, he also engaged with the communities he encountered, preaching unity under the Erd Tree and promising protection and prosperity under the Golden Order's guidance. His approach was not merely to conquer but to convert, aiming to weave a larger, more cohesive social fabric. Parallel to his military and reformative efforts, Godwyn championed the arts and sciences, believing that cultural flourishing was essential to the spiritual and intellectual revival of his society. He patronized scholars, artists, and inventors, offering them places of honor in his court. The capital under Godwyn's rule began to thrive as a center of learning and culture, attracting thinkers and creators from across the lands between. This renaissance not only bolstered the internal strength of the Golden Order, but also served as a diplomatic tool, impressing foreign dignitaries and securing alliances with neighboring states. Yet Godwyn's ambitions extended beyond terrestrial power. He was deeply spiritual, often retreating to the sanctum of the Erd Tree to meditate and seek divine guidance. His faith was profound, and he promoted a doctrine that espoused a direct communion with the divine through personal piety and devotion, challenging the more hierarchical and ritualistic practices that had become prevalent. This aspect of his leadership brought him into quiet conflict with the more conservative clerics, but his popularity and successes provided him with considerable leverage. Despite his achievements and the adoration of his followers, Godwyn's rise was not without its challenges. The more power he amassed, the more he became the target of intrigue and animosity, not only from those he had displaced, but also from those within his circle who envied or feared his growing influence. It was during this zenith of his power that the shadows of betrayal began to gather around him. Tragically, Godwyn's reign was cut short. His untimely death under mysterious circumstances, a blend of betrayal, poison and dark magic, plunged the Golden Order into a period of grief and turmoil. His death became a subject of legend. Some said he was too pure for the world. Others whispered of a curse that hung over the golden lineage, and a few believed he had been sacrificed for his radical vision. In the wake of his passing, the Golden Order struggled to uphold the ideals that Godwyn had instilled. His reforms and policies survived in some form, carried forward by his loyal followers who had seen the potential of his vision. His aspirations for a unified, prosperous realm under the guidance of a revitalized Golden Order remained a beacon for future generations who would invoke his name and legacy as they sought to navigate their own troubled times. Godwyn the Golden, in his life and death, remained a symbol of what could be achieved through faith, courage, and an unwavering commitment to a higher cause. His story echoing through the ages as a reminder of the profound impact one leader can have on the destiny of a realm. Story 17. Deep in the shadowed recesses of the lands between, far from the prying eyes of the ruling demigods and their zealot enforcers, there existed a clandestine gathering known as the Festival of the Damned. This eerie festival was held once a year on the night of the blood moon, a celestial event that bathed the land in a haunting, crimson glow. The festival was a secret symphony of the cursed and the forgotten, those touched by dark fates, or bearing the marks of ancient bands. The Festival of the Damned took place in the ruins of Elder, a once sacred site now reduced to rubble and whispers. This location was chosen for its seclusion and its spiritual potency, believed by the participants to be a place where the veil between worlds was thin, allowing for powerful magical currents to flow freely during the blood moon. The festival began with the gathering of shadows, a ritual where participants, cloaked and masked to hide their identities even from each other, silently formed a great circle around the remains of the Eldergrove's central altar. Each participant brought with them a token of their curse or burden, a withered flower, a broken blade, a tear-stained piece of cloth, items that were then cast into a large black cauldron at the center of the altar. Following the gathering of shadows was the chant of the Forsaken. This was a mournful, melodic incantation sung in the old tongue, its verses telling tales of loss and resilience. The chant grew louder and more fervent with each verse, its energy rising with the ascent of the blood moon into the night sky. The participants believed that their voices, when combined under the blood moon, could reach the ears of the ancient spirits, perhaps earning their favor, or at least their acknowledgement. After the chant, the festival shifted to the dance of the lost. This was no ordinary dance, but a ritualistic performance symbolizing the struggle against the dark fates that bound the participants. They danced around the cauldron, their movements wild and desperate, each step and turn a defiance of their doom. The dance was both a plea for liberation from their curses and a celebration of their endurance, a powerful expression of pain turned into art. While the rituals of the festival were steeped in ancient tradition and mystic symbolism, the true purpose of the Festival of the Damned was communal catharsis and secret solidarity. It was an opportunity for those shunned by society to feel a sense of belonging, to share their burdens without fear of judgment, and to renew their inner strength by connecting with others who shared their plight. The festival also served as a covert exchange of forbidden knowledge and magical practices. Among the participants were mages, witches, and scholars who had been ostracized for their beliefs or practices. In the safety of the festival's secrecy, they shared spells, potions, and arcane knowledge, preserving and passing on their crafts that would have otherwise been lost or destroyed by the dominant forces of the lands between. As the night waned and the blood moon began to dip below the horizon, the festival concluded with the ritual of renewal. Participants approached the cauldron one by one, each retrieving a random token previously cast by another. This act symbolized the sharing of burdens and the communal support that defined the spirit of the festival. With a new token as a talisman, each participant left Eldergrove with a piece of someone else's curse to bear as their own, a powerful reminder of their shared humanity and mutual suffering. As dawn approached and the blood moon faded, the Festival of the Damned dispersed, its participants disappearing back into the folds of the lands between. They returned to their lives marked by curses and ostracism, but bolstered in spirit and bonded by the profound connections forged in the night's secret revelries. Though forbidden and fraught with peril, the Festival of the Damned stood as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a quiet rebellion against a world that sought to deny their existence. Story 18. In the scorched and barren landscapes of the Ashen Fields, where the remnants of volcanic giants rose like grim monuments to a forgotten era, lived a young giant named Oroth. Unlike his kin, who had resigned themselves to the dwindling fate of their race, Oroth was consumed by a desire to uncover the history and downfall of his ancestors, the mighty fire giants. Oroth's journey began in the shadow of the Great Cinder, the largest and oldest volcano in the Ashen Fields. It was said that the fire giants, beings of molten rock and flame, had first emerged from the fiery bowels of this volcano, wielding powers that could forge and destroy worlds. Raised on tales of their legendary feats, Oroth sought to connect with these ancient forebears and perhaps understand why their once mighty civilization had crumbled to ashes. Oroth's quest for knowledge led him to the ancient Archive of Embers, a hidden library carved into the heart of the Great Cinder itself. Here, guarded by the ageless Flamekeeper, were scrolls and artifacts detailing the rise and fall of the fire giants. The Flamekeeper, seeing the fire of curiosity in Oroth's eyes, allowed him access to the archives, where Oroth learned of his ancestors' history. The fire giants, according to the scrolls, were not only formidable warriors but also master craftsmen